Sometimes, children, we make all the best plans in the world, and other people sometimes seem to crowd in on those plans and make them not what we wanted them to be. But in that time, we always try to figure out still to do what is best and what pleases God. Such was the case for one of today's saints from the Martyrology, St. Romanus. He himself wanted nothing more in life than to be a hermit. He just wanted to get away from everything, go off into the wilderness, and live all by himself so he could just pray to God. And for a little while, it worked. It took a little time. He lived in France, at the time Gaul, and he knew that he had to find a way to find some spot for himself that he could go to where people would leave him alone. Well, and that place had to be just right for him. He found that place. It was in fact so hard to get to that nobody really owned it. And so he didn't have to buy it from anybody. He just had to show up there. If he could get there, the land was his. And it was up in the hills, up in the mountains, and it was surrounded by these peaks, and they had these two rivers that came together right there. So he had plenty of fresh water. He had good fertile land in the same spot. He had these fir trees which provided cover for him so that he could be out of the elements, in the wintertime out of the snow and the cold wind, and in the summertime out of the hot sun. And so just all the boxes ticked off, and he thought, perfect, this is where I'll go. And so off up there he went, and he stayed there for a while, and he was happy as a clam, just there amongst himself, praying and sacrificing for God. But then eventually, what he didn't plan on happening was that his own brother would come and encroach on his little solitude. He'd come up there, his name was Lupicinus, and he came up there and he wanted to be a hermit too. And he told some of his friends about this place that his brother owned, that it was really swell, and that you guys should come along as well. And so next thing you know, it was his brother and all these other novice hermits, about 12 additional ones in all, and they're all up in the stake in the same spot. And they barely had enough room for each other to have their own little cell and everything like that, and now nobody was by themselves all whatsoever. But Romanus, he realized that it was good for God, and he had no problem sharing the land and all of the things there with his brother and his fellow monks. And he started to teach them the way of monasticism. Well, in time, sometimes as it happens, he ended up getting in a fight with his brother. His brother was very zealous himself, and he was very penitential, and he was very hard on himself, and so much so that he would not eat anything other than some porridge that he would make that had no seasoning or anything whatsoever. It was kind of very bland and yucky. And he thought to himself that everybody should be able to live as a hard life as I do. And so he would see these other brothers, these other monks that are up there, and they would be eating fish, or they would be eating herbs and vegetables and things like that. And he looked down his nose at them and he thought less of them, and thought, why are they not sacrificing like me? Why are they not just living off of the porridge? And he thought himself better. And so one day he had enough of it, and he gathered up all of the food that the other monks were eating, and he threw it in one giant pot, kind of spoiling it for everybody, and just said, you people are a joke. You can't take this seriously. You need to live a much harsher life. This is a life of penance. Why are you so soft? Why are you eating fish? Why are you eating eggs, etc.? And all the other monks looked at him absolutely astonished and very hurt, and they all walked away and left the life of solitude. And it was just Romanus and Lupicinus left up there. And Romanus came and found all these monks gone, and as a part of him, they kind of liked it. He thought, well, back to silence again, this is pretty nice. But then he realized what had happened as to why they had left, and he knew it was wrong. And so he had it out with his brother. He got in a big fight with his brother. And he told him that he was wrong, and that he was unkind, and he lacked charity, and that all these monks were good men, and that because he was too hard on them and expected too much of people that were coming from different various points in life and hadn't advanced to the level of sacrifice that he had, that he was responsible for driving them out. And then Romanus left his brother and went out and followed after. And one by one he found and rounded back up all 12 of the brothers that had left. And he told them that such things would never happen again, that they should come back, they should not think less of themselves, that they're all working towards the same perfection, and that God is very pleased with what they've done so far, and they should continue on the way. And one by one they came back up to the hills and lived out the rest of their days as good holy monks. In fact, many of them were later sent off to start up their own monasteries as abbots somewhere else, having advanced so far in the spiritual life. It's a good lesson for all of us as we come into Lent. The temptation is going to be there sometimes when you're going to think to yourself, I'm doing pretty good at my Lenten sacrifices, my Lenten resolutions. And then you might see what somebody else around you, one of your classmates, is doing. And you might think, well, I'm doing more than him, or I'm doing more than her. I must be better. Don't entertain that thought. Perhaps that person is doing a little bit more secretly. Or perhaps that is what level God has given them the grace to be able to sacrifice, and they're doing it more perfectly than you. It doesn't matter what your neighbor sacrifices. It doesn't matter how much they give. As long as you're doing your best and they're doing their best, all of the sacrifices, all of the works that we do, it's all for God. And so we don't have to compare ourselves. We don't have to look at each other to what we're doing. No, we just focus on doing the best we can with the graces we've been given to sacrifice and to love God well. May God bless you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost.